Okay, we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of our Zoom gatherings that is going to help us prepare for this election day. Uh, just to remind you that this is not an official uh, business meeting, so there will not be any motions or anything of that nature. We have to remember that November the 3rd is just 21 days away. Ladies and gentlemen, 21 days away. Early voting is less than that, it's 2 days away. So we have to be ready to do what we need to do to get the vote out. And as you all know, early voting has already started and started in September. So that tells me and should be telling you that we don't have any time to waste. So let's just take a deep breath and let's prepare ourselves to win in November. So let's take time and let's reflect on just some of the good things that has gone on in our lives here over this year. Let's reflect on some of the things that our service people has provided to us. Let's reflect on our leaders and pray for each and every one. So I'm gonna ask each and every one, if you would, to join me for a moment of silence, and we just reflect on these things that we know that is important to us as Democrats. So if you would, please pause. Thank you. Now, I do want to remind everyone that I am joined by several of the officers. I'm joined with Pam Harmon, who is our third vice president, as well as our communication director. Mr. Jerry Blake, who is our treasurer, who you will be hearing from here momentarily, and Mr. Kent Blevins, who is our secretary and one who is pretty much in charge of this meeting. So I'm gonna call on Mr. Jerry Blake if he would just lead us into our pledge of allegiance, and we will hear from others soon after. So, Mr. Blake, would you please?
Thank you, Curtis. Will you all join with me in pledging? I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
the
flag
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 of the United
United
States of
States
States
of
America
America,
and to the
and to the
republic
the
republic
republic for which it
for which it
for which
stands,
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
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 God,
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 indivisible, with
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty,
justice
with
for
liberty and
justice
all.
for
justice
all.
for all.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Pam.
Hello, everyone. We have a star-studded group of state and district candidates zooming in to touch base with us tonight. Cheri Beasley, North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice, incumbent in that office. Elaine Marshal, North Carolina Secretary of State, also an incumbent. Wayne Goodwin, former State Commissioner of Insurance, seeking to return to that office, also the current North Carolina State Democratic Party Chair. Jenna Wadsworth, rising star newcomer and for State Agriculture Commissioner. David Wilson Brown, seeking to represent our new District 5 in the U.S. Congress. These are hardly strangers to most of us, and we're proud to have them leading our blue slate. This is an opportunity to meet them directly, hear their goals and how their campaigns are going, to motivate us all to spread the word about them and to vote, vote, vote. A program note, the speakers are on tight schedules, as you can imagine, in the heat of the campaign, and we won't have the flexibility of a town hall for questions. If you do have a question, we ask that you enter it into the chat box, and the moderators will ask those for which there's time. So let's get started. Here's Omax Gardner III to introduce our keynoter, Cheri Beasley. Max is known in the legal field as one of the best bankruptcy attorneys in the country and a teacher of others. We friends in Cleveland County smile at his posts from the South Mountain Farm featuring his beloved animals, from puppies to goats to guineas. Most of all, we count on his carrying forward the legacy of his grandfather, North Carolina Governor O. Max Gardner, and his grandmother, Miss Fay. We're fortunate to have Max's perspective. He himself was a clerk to a state Supreme Court Chief Justice, William H. Bobbitt, who served as Chief Justice from 1969 to 1974. So Max knows what this post entails. Max, we're glad to have you with us. Over to you now.
Well, thank you, Pam. It's an honor to be here and to introduce our Chief Justice. It was a little over 46 years ago when I served as the last clerk for our Chief Justice, William Bobbitt. I remember when I took the job, I thought I was going to be doing legal research and writing briefs and helping writing opinions. And I soon found out that the job involved a lot more than that. We spent more time with Franklin Freeman, who was the director of the administrative office of the court, making decisions about district court judges and superior court judges and the assignments of judges, administrative issues that came up in some of our 100 counties. And I was amazed about the responsibilities that the Chief Justice has. It is just not hearing cases or writing decisions or assigning cases to other justices for decisions. It is a very intense administrative job that manages a very, very large bureaucracy in all our 100 counties. Chief Justice Beasley has spent at least 20 years dedicated to the cause of justice in our state. She's been a district court judge. She's been an appellate judge on our Court of Appeals, an associate justice on our Supreme Court. And of course, Governor Cooper appointed her as Chief Justice in 2019. The second justice I worked for was a justice by the name of Susie Sharp, who I'm sure all of you know about. Chief Justice Beasley graduated from Rutgers. She got her law degree from the University of Tennessee and a Master in Laws and Judicial Studies from Duke University. She's the mother of 2 twin boys who are currently college students. She is the first African-American woman to lead the North Carolina Supreme Court. And the work she has done with COVID-19 and handling the administration of justice in the state, trying to keep the wheels of justice going with COVID-19 has been truly amazing to me. She is a remarkable person, and it's a real honor for me to introduce her to you right now. Justice Beasley.
Thank you so very much, Max. I'm truly honored to be here with the Cleveland County Democrats, and I'm especially honored to be introduced by Max. We all know his level of service, not just to Cleveland County, but to the people of North Carolina and to this nation. I am standing here in great gratitude for him and for all of you. I hope that as we were offered reflections at the beginning of this evening, that we also feel a sense of excitement, that we feel a sense of empowerment around this election. It is true that we have 21 more days before Election Day, but this is an amazing time for all of us to really talk with people around us, to make sure that they understand why this election is so important. We know that we hear people say that this is the most important election of our lives. And frankly, I think that every election is the most important election of our lives, but it is certainly quite a consequential election for all of us. It is important that we make sure that everybody in North Carolina understands why these elections are important. For people around us who may be feeling a little down, we certainly know that this pandemic has offered its share of challenges to all of us and to so many people in our communities and across the state of North Carolina. We know that people have been challenged around heightened racial tensions in North Carolina and across this nation. It is so important that people feel a sense of empowerment around this election. We all know, Cleveland County Democrats know that this is the time that all of us have an opportunity to determine who will serve us going forward. Now, it's really important that we make sure that people know that North Carolina has the third longest ballot in the nation. So in the very same way that people are coming to you, not just during election time, but all year long, asking you advice about the things that they ought to care about and why they should care, they should be coming to you and you should be advising them about how important this election is and about this ballot. Please make sure that people understand how to vote on this ballot. Please make sure that they understand why their vote counts. People continue to ask me that all the time. How do we know that every vote counts? Well, many of us here just this evening can recall, I can personally recall being in a close election. And trust me when I tell you that every single vote counts. But it doesn't just count for the candidates, it counts for all of us. When your vote counts, you count. And it's important for us to vote, not just for ourselves, but it's important for us to vote on issues and for people to make sure that we are covering those who can't vote for themselves, who can't stand for themselves, who don't have a voice for themselves. And that's our responsibility. I know that people will understand what to do at the top of the ballot. I know that people feel very strongly about Joe Biden. I know people feel very strongly about Cal Cunningham. I know that people feel very strongly about Governor Roy Cooper. We need to make sure that people feel strongly about every single office on the ballot. And I would urge you that justice is on the ballot this year. Please, please don't forget the judges. I am asking that you support Mark Davis, who is currently serving on the Supreme Court, that you also support Lucy Inman, who is running for the Supreme Court, that you support Reuben Young, who is on the Court of Appeals and running for a re-election, that you support Chris Brook, who's on the Court of Appeals, that you support Laura Cubbage, who is running for the Court of Appeals, that you support Tricia Shields, who is running for the Court of Appeals, and that you also support Grace Stiers, who is running for the Court of Appeals. Now, we all know that the mail-in ballot voting has begun. We all know that folks are working really hard to make sure that they get their votes in timely. We know that early voting at the polls starts on October 15th on Thursday. Please make sure that people understand that they can vote early on the 15th and also through the 31st of October. And of course, Election Day is on November the 3rd. We all know that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg recently died. And we know that she meant so much to the people across this nation. We know that she fought hard for women's rights, and we know that she fought hard for equal justice for all people. She was here in Raleigh about a year ago, and she talked about how hard it was for her to find a job after she graduated #1 in her law class from Columbia Law School, how she helped her husband through law school at Harvard as he suffered through testicular cancer. She talked about her romance with her husband, Marty, and her children. And she certainly talked about her service on the Supreme Court of the United States. Certainly, as she's become an icon in pop culture and among lawyers and non-lawyers, as the notorious RBG, she left us a gift. She left us the gift to understanding why our court, the US Supreme Court, is important and why all of our courts are important. And the other gift she left us was the gift to fight. She said, fight for the things you care about, but lead in a way where others will follow. Well, it is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that those around us understand that this election is important, that justice is up and down the ballot, and that all of us have a responsibility to make sure that those around us understand the sanctity and consequential nature of this election. So I'm excited. I hope that we're not feeling down and out. I hope we are invigorated and excited about this election. I hope we all see victory on the other side of this on November 3rd. I hope we all make sure that the people around us feel a sense of empowerment as they understand the people that they are voting for and they understand that they have a right to vote. So let's do this. Let's make sure that there is victory up and down the ticket on all 3 pages of this ballot. Make sure that people turn the ballot over, and let's win big on November the 3rd. Thank you so much, and I'm
ma'am.
glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that, Justice Beasley. My name is Kent Blevins. I am party secretary and one of the moderators for this session. And that is very inspiring. And you were so right. Justice is on the ballot. We need justices that will fight for justice. And we appreciate the time that you have taken out of your schedule to be with us. I'm going to ask my colleague Pam if she has any questions in the chat box. We ask that if you do have questions along the way, for those of you who come into the meeting, there is a chat box and you can put your questions there. So Pam, anything?
We do have some questions that were submitted ahead of time. The first one is, you're a proponent of drug addiction recovery courts, and some 24 North Carolina counties have them now. When and how may other counties such as ours get a recovery court?
You know, that's a great question. There was a time when all of our counties had drug recovery courts, and we just must make sure to restore them. We certainly know that before the pandemic, we needed them, and we certainly know through the pandemic, we need them even more. Substance misuse is up during this pandemic, and we as the court system must be a part of making sure that people can be successful in their lives. I am pleased to tell you that through this difficult budget that never was even passed, we gained 5 additional courts, and we will continue to fight very hard for additional courts. I want to make sure that we have substance abuse courts in all of our counties across the state. So I will keep you all informed and certainly want you to be a part of that process, but I appreciate the question.
Okay. All right. We have 2 other questions here. The next one is, what major issues are likely to be before the court over the next 8-year term of the chief? For example, will we see election disputes, redistricting differences?
Likely, and even before we get into the next term, there could be some of those issues which come up over the next several weeks. We know that there are voting issues in some of our lower courts, and those issues very well may be appealed to the Supreme Court of North Carolina, but it's hard to know. It's certainly hard to know what issues will come before the courts in the next term, but the issues that you all care about, the people, the issues that you know, people tend to be talking about tend to be the issues that come before the court. But we also hear cases like car accident cases. Those aren't typical, but we do hear those kinds of cases as well.
Okay. All right. And one more question that was submitted early is, what will it take to expand broadband internet access evenly across the state, given how crucial it is to courts, schools, and the economy?
That is so true. I've certainly been in conversations with the governor's office about this. We know that in a time of a pandemic, the schools need broadband. We know that the courts need broadband, and we know that, but everybody needs it, and everybody deserves it. So we are in talks. It'll be interesting to see what happens once we get to the other side of this election, so that we can talk more extensively with the legislature about funding. But everybody needs it, and it's accessible. So we just really must do better. So trust me, that is truly one of my goals, as it is for the governor.
Good. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
those
thank
are all the
you.
questions I have.
Okay, thank you so much, Pam, and thanks again to Chief Justice Cheri Beasley for and sharing with us and inspiring us really with your message. And so now I'll turn things over to Betsy Wells. She is going to introduce Elaine Marshal. Betsy is chair of Congressional District 5 Democrats, as well as continuing chair for a long time of the Democratic precinct of Grover in Cleveland County. So Betsy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you do. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Chief
so much
Justice.
for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is Betsy Wells, and thank you for the promotion, Kent. I'm the first vice chair of District 5. I was the 10th district chair, so thank you for the promotion. But Charlie is a good chair in District 5. But I'm delighted to be here among Cleveland County Democrats, as always. And we have with us tonight Stella Pam has said, a stellar group of speakers. Elaine Marshal is one of those Democrats we feel we know that we can rely on. She has been a friend ever since she was in the General Assembly. She has served 6 terms as Secretary of State. In 1996, she became the first woman in North Carolina to be elected to a statewide executive branch office. And fast forward to the past 2016 election, Elaine Marshal won more votes than any other statewide candidate. She earned her bachelor's degree at the University of Maryland, her law degree at the Campbell University. She's been a public school teacher, a communities college teacher, and a small business owner. But we've known Secretary Marshal for a long time in the Democratic Party. She was National Secretary of Young Democrats of America to Democratic Women of America. She was the Harnett County Democrat Party Chair, and once again is leading our blue ballot slate. Elaine, welcome to be among the friends of Cleveland County. You are a dear friend, and you always come whenever we ask you. Even we know it's a long way from Raleigh, and many times you've driven up here to be a speaker at an event over the years. And thank you for that, and we look forward to hearing from you now.
Thank you so much, Betsy. It is so good to see you. I miss you, and I miss a lot of folks out there. It's just, this is the most challenging campaign time I've ever experienced. And I'm just so glad that the Cleveland County Party has pulled together this very, very nice event. I don't know who prepared these slides, but they're very nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's great. It's a pleasure to be with all my friends, as Betsy has said. When Betsy asks me to do something, I try to do it if I possibly can, because Betsy is somebody I value. As soon as somebody mentioned Grover Precinct, it made me think about Dean. We're going to miss him so, so very much, his wisdom. And, you know, he provided so much leadership to the Board of Election and to the show that he did and Counterpoint. And I'm just going to miss him an awful lot. But the Secretary of State's office is probably a confusing office to people. There's a TV show on, and I don't do anything. I do a little bit like that, but not much at all like the TV show. And then a lot of Secretary of States around the country do elections. So the most notable thing that you hear about Secretary of State is when something goes wrong with elections. And indeed, I have gotten so many calls from NBC, ABC, CBS, and all those others wanting to know, since we're a battleground state in top 10, what I have been doing about election protection. And we have to send those over to the State Board of Elections, since I really don't do the conduct of elections. I take my hat off to the Board of Elections, doing astronomical work under very difficult circumstances. But the Secretary of State's office here is actually the strongest in the whole country. I say that because I have more authority to do more things than the rest of my colleagues. I have authority to take people's licenses away and discipline them in some ways, and I also have criminal authority. But getting back to the basics of the office, it is business development. It is our job to help with business creation. It is our job to help with the facilitation of capital and the movement of capital. And we also have a consumer protection aspect to the office. Let's go back. All the business corporations and LLCs are formed within the office. I say I go through the maternity ward when I walk to my office because we're birthing. And you wouldn't believe the number of corporations we've been birthing lately. We thought that might be down in the pandemic, but we were so wrong. Pretty soon, sometime this month, we will do as many corporations, LLCs, or nonprofits as we did in all of 2019. The month of August was incredible. We thought we were really just knocking it out when we had done about 15,000 corporations in 1 month. Well, lo and behold, in September, we did 19,000. Unbelievable. I'm so proud of my employees. It is not funny. So sometime at about the third week of this month, we will exceed all we did in 2019. There's an entrepreneurial spirit in North Carolina. Interest rates are low. People are deciding to create corporations or LLCs because they're not sure that what they've been doing is going to sustain them and their families. So they have that spirit and that perseverance and that drive, and they're starting business. It might be a side business. It might be a full-time business. We don't know. When I say we facilitate capital, banks and other lenders file documents with us. We're the honest broker to hold evidence of collateral for commercial loans. The other part of forming capital that we deal with is I regulate all the stockbrokers and investment advisors that sell in North Carolina. It's more than just those that live here. It's if they live anywhere and have a client in North Carolina, then they fall under my jurisdiction. And so when people are doing investment offerings to get shareholders, get supporters, get investors, if they offer it to more than a handful of family members and a few more than that, then it has to be registered with the state. That's true in every state. It's not unique to North Carolina. That registration allows us to evaluate it and make sure that there is a there, that somebody has the feasibility to do what they say they're going to do, that somebody has the expertise, they've got some kind of plan. We can't guarantee to investors that it's going to be a good deal and make them money, but we can tell them it's not a sham and scam from the very beginning. When I put on my consumer protection hat, we have law enforcement authority. There are plenty of folks that are one-time registered stockbrokers that go rogue, unfortunately. We can take their license away. We also deal with the garden variety crooks who get in this area, who are trying to separate you and your retirement funds from you. I always tell people, you use us as a resource, call us, because if anybody's offering you an investment product, it has to be registered with the state or we have to give them an exemption, and there are just basically none of those. We could prevent so many crimes if somebody would call up and say, is this product registered? Is this person registered? Let me give you an example. We gave a guy who was 65 years old about a 25-year sentence in Durham. There were multiple cases. We didn't bring all the counts because the people were soon retired or had been retired and could not stand the stress of actually participating in a criminal trial. So we went ahead with 9 victims. He got over 20 years. He will probably die in prison. And if he was, the school board of a certain county allowed him to come on the school property with an after-school meeting for people that were retired or soon to be retiring. And they really cloaked him with authority by allowing him to come on the school campus. If they'd have called out us, we'd have said, no, he doesn't have a license to sell anything. We turned him down. The reason we turned him down was because he was in a scheme thing up in Virginia. And the reason he didn't go to jail was because he testified against somebody else who'd done worse than he had. And, you know, we could have prevented so much tragedy for all these people. In this case, he finally did a plea after about 4 days of trial. And I know jurors leave the courthouse just as soon as it's over. We had jurors who said, can we come back tomorrow for sentencing? And 9 of the 12 jurors came back to see what kind of time this guy was going to get for all these egregious robbery, all this scamming that he had done from these folks. So I'm very proud of the work that we have done in that area. Plus, we also take consumer protection to try to prevent the crime. And it's not just in the investment scams. I'm on the circuit talking about counterfeit goods. I'm also talking about fake charities. I hear something ringing. That must be supposedly telling me something, but I'm still talking.
It's more people coming to hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hello. Welcome. But, that's the kind of job I have. I love it. I hope to have another 4 years. With your help, I will. I'll be happy to answer questions. In my next term going forward, cybersecurity is always #1 priority for us. Our databases have cut down on the cost of doing business. They're free to use. That's not so in other states. And so we know every day that people are making business decisions. They can make better business decisions with what's on our website. Things like, who are they going to insure? Who are they going to extend credit to? They can get little pieces of information that help them make up their mind about these business issues. Electronic commerce, e-commerce, we've developed an e-notary. You can now have a totally paperless loan closing here in North Carolina. It's the wave of the future. It's what millennials want. But e-commerce is very, very important to me. We are held out as an example all around the country about how government and citizens and business ought to be interacting. That's wonderful. That's wonderful if you have access to broadband. That's wonderful if you have high-speed internet. We can't be of service to folks if they can't get good technology to us. Sadly, it took a pandemic to show us in this state that we have a serious broadband problem. I am strongly committed to working on that in the next 4 years. I think I'm ideally situated with that. Number one, I've got a product that will make people's lives better. We certainly need it for education. We certainly need it for medicine, but we need it for economic development. Homegrown industries and cottage crafters can have better access to their markets with broadband. They're at a competitive disadvantage without it. Companies are not going to come to an area unless we've got a good infrastructure. They want good education, well-trained workforce, and they want high-speed internet. You could give away the county if the county was willing to put that much in incentives, and you still can't get them to come. That's what I've been trying to beat into the heads of the members of the legislature, because they think that there's something magical that we can do. Well, the magical part is that we can get them to take that statute and abolish it, where municipalities and local governments cannot get involved in broadband. That was something that happened after the city of Wilson did a very good outreach to put their own homegrown broadband for their citizens. And all of a sudden, the big utility providers got into a terror and went down to the General Assembly and just nipped it in the bud. We need a change in the General Assembly for lots of reasons, but that is clearly one of them. There are enough of us that believe we can meet this challenge with public-private partnerships, but municipalities have got to be involved. The state has got to be involved, and the electric co-ops, telephone co-ops, the kind of folks that serve that last mile citizen need to be involved. So, and you know, the broadband problem is different east to west. When you get to the west beyond you all, you've got a lot of federal land. You've got the nooks and the valleys, the ups and the downs. And so the concept of broadband has got to have a different approach out there. So I'm head over heels and working on that in the next 4 years.
Thank you so much, Secretary Marshal. Again, this is Kent Blevins. I am the secretary of our local Cleveland County Democratic Party. And I've learned so much. I confess I'm one of those who probably didn't have a very good idea about what your job entails. And I've really learned a lot. I appreciate your explaining things. I have to apologize, the sound thing. That was a notification when other people want to join us in the meeting, but I've turned that little sound off so that shouldn't bother us anymore. I'm going to ask Pam, because she's checking the chat box to see if there are questions, and there may have been some questions submitted before our meeting. So I'll ask her if there are some questions for you to answer.
Okay, there's one in the chat box. We'll start with that, and then I'll go to the ones that were submitted early. This one says, Madam Secretary, how did you manage to have your totally advanced technology platform for the whole Secretary of State office implemented?
Well, when I came in, we were told that there was some plan that, or at least permission that had been given from the state board that did these things. Well, after the election, before I got sworn in, they said, oh, no, there really isn't any. I was upset at that point, but you know what? It was the best thing that happened. It was a clean slate. I was able to recruit to my office a technology person, a seasoned state government person who had worked assigned to the Secretary of State's office. So he had some knowledge about what our business line was all about. Since I had been in the state Senate, I could go over there and I could ask them for money. I laid out my plan and I got an initial $2 million to be able to start our program. They trusted me. They trusted that I was going to do what I was going to do and do it on the right timeline. That happened. And we, the Secretary of State, actually owns our technology system. We are not beholden to a vendor who has us by the short hairs. That's why we can let people use it for free in North Carolina. Some of the big vendors tried to buy our technology, and I wasn't going to sell it, but they went around and built something like ours and went to other states and said, we know you don't have the money to do this. We will give it to you for free. And in fact, you'll make some money out of it. It'll feed your bottom line because we're going to give you a few cents off each transaction. And so they turned it over to third-party vendors. That's why you have to pay a sign-up fee, a registration fee, a click fee, a look fee, and you've got all these hurdles that you've got to jump. Try doing some of the stuff that people do with us in Virginia, for example, or Delaware, or, other states. And it's a whole new ball game. I get people that email to me every day, how did you do this? And, well, I wish Virginia was like North Carolina. We didn't have enough money to do everything I wanted to do. So there was kind of a crisis in the Secretary of State world around the year 2000, because we were all having to convert to something on this, where we file these lien documents for banks and other lenders. The national kind of concept of that had changed. So I had colleagues who had no money, were given nothing, and they were facing a deadline. I had the state of New York spent $10 million, and my technology guy found a flaw in the program that had been developed for them. And at that point, we became rock stars. I bailed out the state of Kentucky, and we entered into an agreement where we bartered this valuable asset that we had with other states. And the deal was, you give North Carolina credit, and if you build something on this or upgrade it in any way, we get that back. We get the code back. And that turned out to be a lifesaver. You can thank the people of Missouri and New Mexico for building the notary platform. They collaboratively built it together, and then we got all that code back. All we had to do was test it and integrate it into ours. The same is true with securities, registration of stockbrokers and all. We had some federal help on that, but we've been able to do it one building block by a time. So we created the architecture and the go-by, how to do it, and then other people helped out by building the different building blocks on top of the architecture. And I mean, we're constantly upgrading. There's no doubt about that. Technology is a race without a finish line, whether it's technology security or having the right technology to serve citizens. So I'm not a technologist myself, but I know what my end result is that I want. And so we work to go there. So it was, somebody needs to write a real case study about this, which is how we got the technology that we have, and we own it.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, we have two questions that were submitted ahead of time. The first one is, consumers and investors benefit from regulations protecting them, but small businesses are among the organizations saying regulations are too often a burden. How do you balance the two objectives of regulation?
Well, there's a little bit of a misconception that I regulate business, and because all the corporations and LLCs are registered there, I really have no regulatory authority over them. There are people every week that ask me to do something about some corporation or nonprofit they think is not doing right, and that I should jump in and mediate it or something. And please deliver me from homeowners associations that don't do right. There are plenty. I see chuckles here in the faces I can see. We only regulate the business when they are doing some other function that we regulate, like notary, like investments, like trademarks. It comes in spurts, and most of the laws that we administer are uniform laws. There's a system of uniform laws. They're slightly customized state by state, but everybody in my business knows that business can't survive. They operate across state lines all the time. They do not need to know a set of instructions for South Carolina, one set of instructions for North Carolina, one set for Virginia, one set for Kentucky. It just makes business too hard. And we have kind of synchronized, commoditized the basic information. And when folks are trying to change their law, we sometimes get in there and tamp down and say, look, we need to be more unified around this country. This is true, especially in securities law. So it's not particularly a balance that I have to deal with very much in the way that some people might think I do. I hope everybody notices I got my Ruth Bader Ginsburg necklace on tonight. So
Yeah.
I wear this for Democratic events.
Good.
Okay,
Good
so
job, Ruth.
one more question. After each presidential election, the Secretary of State receives election results from the State Board of Elections and certifies them to the governor for the Electoral College. In your 6 terms, have you ever had any difficulty with the process? And are you looking forward to November the 3rd?
definitely I'm looking forward to November 3rd. I think everybody that has a TV or some media device is looking for November 3rd because we might get them back after that. Somebody's wonky learning what I have to do with certifications. I certify things that go to countries all around the world, but some of the most important papers I certify are who won our election for US Senate, who wins our elections for congressional seats, and I certify, and that goes to Washington, and I certify to the governor who won the popular vote here in North Carolina. Once that happens, then electors are called to Raleigh. This year, I think it's Monday the 14th or 15th. Anyway, it's one of those, a week after the second day after the month of something else, one of those kind of computations. Only one time have I called Democratic electors. There have been no big problems. We haven't had any electors to try to cast a vote contrary to what the vote of the citizens was. There were rumblings that there was a movement to try to get people not to support Donald Trump following the election 4 years ago, but nobody did that. I'll tell you what our policy is. We get questions all the time about who the electors are. We don't know until after the election. Right now, there are 5 parties on the ballot. We have 5 sets of potential electors that have been certified to us sometime a month ago or 2 months ago by the various political parties. They're all sitting there, and we'll put 4 of them aside and we'll deal with the one that wins when that time comes. There is always a meeting of electors the evening before because it's a ceremony, it's official. I wouldn't call it a script, but there is an agenda that we follow, and we have to elect presidential elector, and who gets to do the nomination, who gets to do the seconding, all that thing, who gets to preside over the business meeting. I preside over the overall meeting, but then I turn it over to somebody to provide for the business part. Because I've called in Republican electors all but one occasion, there has been some suspicion. I try to go to the elector meeting myself to make sure that they understand from me, the very top person, that this is the dignity of the state of North Carolina. It is at this point not a political activity. It is what the voters have voted. And sometimes still that does not allay their fears. After the electoral meeting is over, I think every year somebody has come up, either an elector or somebody from the audience, and said, we really didn't trust you. We really didn't, one guy said, now I know why we can't beat you. It's because you know what you're doing and you do it well. I took that as a compliment. But at that point, once the voters have cast their vote, then it is not for any one of us to diminish those votes, no matter what our personal preferences might be. Now, this year it's going to be different in multiple ways. We are planning to have a skinny down meeting because of social distancing. We've measured to see how many we can have in the old house chamber, and we're going to have like the spouses that want to come over in the Senate chamber so they can be there, but we will be social distancing. The national pundits are talking about challenges to ballots. We certainly expect that there will be some here in North Carolina. There are some people who have been predicted that they will try to drag this thing out, because if the Electoral College cannot happen on the day when it's supposed to, or the papers, what have you, then it goes to the legislature to pick the electors and cast the state's votes no matter what. That is not a situation I want us to have, because I think I'm going to be able to call Democratic electors this time. And if we all work very hard, that will happen. My legal team is preparing me briefs. We've done a walkthrough already. Security walkthrough has already occurred. We've been with the public TV people because it's always televised. If anybody wants to see what it's like, go to my Secretary of State site, which is sosnc.gov. And at the very bottom, you'll find Electoral College. And you can click on and you can see the 2016 meeting. You can see the 2012 meeting. And I'm not sure how many other old ones are up there, but you can see it is a dignified ceremony worthy of making the citizens proud of the 9th largest state in the country. And we do it right. Some other states just have a conference call on, over the telephone and do it, but we do it right here in North Carolina. We always have, and as long as I'm Secretary of State, we always will.
Thank you.
Secretary Marshal, you know what you're doing, and you do it well. And we are so happy to have had you with us tonight. I know I've learned a lot, and we appreciate the time for you to be with us.
Thank you. My parting comment to you all, because I've got a Chamber of Commerce thing. The North Carolina Democratic electorate elected the most diverse slate of candidates that this state has ever seen. I am proud to be running with each and every one of these Democratic candidates for the Council of State. I'm exceedingly proud to be running kind of parallel along with the very diverse judicial slate that we've seen. For once in my lifetime, North Carolina can have leaders and decision makers that more closely represent what the population of this state looks like. And I'm incredibly proud of our offering, what we've done through the primary. We've got to stay united, and we can bring this thing home in a big way for North Carolina. And if we elect Joe Biden, but don't elect Cal Cunningham, we've hampered Joe Biden, because we gotta change the Senate. We've got to change the Senate, and Roy cannot be effective without having at least one chamber. And I prefer that he has two at the General Assembly so that his agenda can get more fully aired and accomplished.
You are absolutely right. And we thank you again for being with us tonight.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Be safe and you plan to vote and go vote, and then bring everybody else you know how.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
Secretary.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I am going to turn things over to our Democratic Party, Cleveland County Democratic Party Chair, Curtis Presley, who will introduce the chair of our North Carolina Democratic Party, Wayne Goodwin.
Thank you, Kent. This guy here, he really don't need any introduction. Wayne is one who's out there. He's been a Democrat, it seems like. Well, I know ever since I've met him, which has been several years back. But Wayne, he is currently the North Carolina Democratic Party chairperson. He is seeking the North Carolina Department of Insurance commissions. Wayne was the insurance commissioner back in 2009 through 2016. Which he did a wonderful job for all us consumers. Now, what a lot of you may not realize is that Wayne is a Morehead scholar who graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, later graduated from the UNC School of Law, and began the law practice where he helped injured workers and assist families with their insurance claims. Elected in 1996 as a representative in the General Assembly, where he fought for public education, economic development, public safety, clean water and air, election laws improvements, and a healthcare bill of rights. After 4 elected terms as state legislator, became the assistant general counsel and assistant state insurance commissioner for 4 years. And having beneficially served North Carolina's consumers and families as insurance commissioners for 2 terms from 2009 to 2016, as I said, and is now running for a 3rd time. What a lot of you doesn't see as the North Carolina chairperson is all the work that he does in front and behind the scene. I know as the chairperson of the county here, Wayne is very involved and he has so much energy, and wherever he can help out, he's more than willing to help and do it with happiness. And so these are the things that I know about Wayne, and so I'm going to turn it over to him so he can go and finish up talking about his purpose in running and all the things that's happening with the North Carolina Democratic Party. So to you, Chairman Goodwin, and looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very kind introduction. It's great to see you again. It's great to see folks from the county. I wish I could be there in person. I know we all miss that part of election years, is being able to spend so much time with so many great friends. But this is the next best thing. Thank you for having me. I listened into Secretary Elaine Marshal's remarks a moment ago, and she's phenomenal. I look forward to joining her back on the Council of State. I'm first going to talk just a little bit about my run for a third term as Insurance Commissioner, and then I'll transition into the other hat that I wear concurrently as State Party Chair, and then we'll see what questions we may have from our audience. There's an Insurance Commissioner in every state. It's not the sexiest subject for folks or the sexiest position, but it impacts everybody. And among all the states, only 11 elect their insurance commissioner, and we're one of them. We have had an insurance commissioner since 1899, and when I was first elected in 2008, now this sounds shocking, it shocks me, I was only the 10th commissioner since 1899 in North Carolina. So there tends to be longevity for folks in these offices, and the voters tend to stick behind folks. You heard my background. I'm from Hamlet, from Richmond County. Been very active in politics since I was a wee lad. I remember first in fourth grade doing a poll, my fourth grade class, whether Jimmy Carter or Gerald Ford were going to win in the presidential race, and then it just all sort of went from there. Very active in teen Democrats, college Democrats, young Democrats, county party chair, various other roles, a Young Democrats president, and of course, some role I did not ever plan to seek was as our state party chair, but more on that later. On the insurance commissioner side, this office is a balancing act. It's a constitutional office. It serves on the Council of State. There's certain functions that the state constitution requires of Council of State members like the insurance commissioner, but most of the job is about helping people, about helping consumers. And on the one hand is to protect consumers from excessive insurance rates, to protect them from inadequate insurance, making sure they get what they pay for, to protect consumers. And I say consumers, that's an individual, it's a family, it could be a small business, could be a community. Protect folks from fraud, insurance fraud, and to protect folks from insolvent insurance companies. So there's a lot involved on the insurance side, but it's a balancing act, like I said. On this other side here is that the insurance commissioner is to do the very level best, make sure that you don't have overregulation of insurance products and services, because if you overregulate, then companies won't be willing to write here, and they won't be willing to offer competitive products and services and prices. So it hurts consumers on this hand if there is overregulation on this hand with the business community. It's also important to make sure that there's a level playing field so that insurance companies feel like they're being treated fairly when they do business in this state. And part of the insurance equation also is with licensees, not just insurance companies. There are a lot of different animals out there that are involved in the insurance world, but the folks who make things happen are the insurance agents. And believe it or not, the number of licensed agents here in North Carolina includes a significant number of people who reside elsewhere. They are agents that do business here, but they live somewhere else. When you count both the out-of-state and in-state agents, it's about 600,000 licensees at last count, maybe more than that by now, but that was when I was last commissioner. This job is important about setting rates for car and homeowners insurance and workers' comp, fighting for the lowest rates possible within other laws on health insurance. And then there's other things too, and I'll explain that. The insurance commissioner regulates collection agents, regulates bail bondsmen, regulates continuing care retirement communities. So we work with senior citizens. The insurance commissioner is responsible for educating senior citizens about their Medicare options every year. The insurance commissioner is in charge of various safety programs through our Safe Kids program. We also work alongside the construction industry and other trades as it relates to building codes and fire codes, mechanical codes, plumbing, fire, just a whole list of things that come within the world of construction and being a general contractor. And there's so much more, but the thing I do want to reference is that the insurance commissioner is also the state fire marshal. And that's I would say a cool part of the job, because you get to be the fire chief for the whole state, the voice of all the firefighters. There are about 53,000 firefighters in North Carolina. 70% are volunteer. It used to be a lot more than that, but it's been more and more difficult for folks to be volunteer firefighters. So there may be some questions about that. Let me tell you some quick accomplishments and then briefly my platform. Accomplishments. Through rate cuts, refunds, rebates I ordered as our insurance commissioner, I saved North Carolinians $2.4 billion. On my watch, I ordered $206 million in refunds. On my watch, I held an auto insurance hearing and determined that we needed to roll back rates to what they were in 2006, and that I froze those rates for 3 years and also ordered another $50 million in refunds to 1 million drivers. And it just so happened that in freezing those rates for 3 years, because of how I addressed it and because the insurance industry was afraid I'd lower rates even more, they decided to extend it to an 8-year freeze. So we all benefited from that 8-year freeze on the cap on car insurance, but we also benefited because of those actions that I took to having the lowest average car insurance premiums in the whole country for the first time. And it hadn't happened since I left office. A couple other things. I took on the state's biggest health insurance carrier and recovered $156 million for 215,000 families. My team, we arrested 1,500 people for committing insurance fraud and made sure they were prosecuted by the courts, and many other things. So this is a lot about saving people money, holding insurance companies accountable, making sure that that consumers' needs are met. Let's shift over to my platform. I'm running for a third term to pick up where I left off. And the reason I left off is because I was one of the casualties of that Trump wave, an unexpected casualty. I had the third closest race statewide. Beth Wood, our state auditor, had the closest race. She won by 1 vote per precinct. Governor Cooper won by about 10,000 votes statewide. And I lost in the third closest race by 0.4%. There's nothing I had done or not done or anything the other candidate had done. The other candidate had been running for this office since 1992. He's been a perennial candidate. He finally won due to Donald Trump, and elections have consequences. And let me tell you why. We need an insurance commissioner that's fighting for access to affordable health insurance. The Republican insurance commissioner is there now, wants to eliminate Affordable Care Act, which means he wants to eliminate gender parity on health care costs. That would mean he's opposed to Medicaid expansion, and he's opposed to a lot of the essential health benefits being offered that we have now through the Affordable Care Act. That is just wrong. Second, we need someone who is willing to hold insurance companies accountable through evidentiary hearings. He's not an attorney. He's the first non-attorney to be the insurance commissioner. He's also the first Republican to ever hold that spot since 1899. And we need an attorney in this instance because I have, just as my predecessor Jim Long did, I have served as a hearing officer, and I can ask the tough questions as the judge of those hearings. And make the result that's fair and based on math and based on the law and based on risk. Third, we need someone who's fighting to help improve the rate making system, make it more transparent. We need someone who will do that. And lastly, but there's a long list of things that I want to do, including reintroducing a diversity and inclusion program. The Commissioner Causey, who's there now, has made it the least diverse department in about 30 years. And I want to reintroduce the program we had to help benefit from the strength of that diversity. But the final thing I'll mention as part of my platform is that, I mentioned that the insurance commissioner, state fire marshal. Well, the number one issue for firefighters is cancer coverage. And you probably say, well, that's unexpected. Why is that? Well, nationally and here in North Carolina, the number one killer of firefighters is not fire. It is not heart attacks. It is cancer. And as you can expect, when you're exposed over years to the things that firefighters are exposed to, the toxins and carcinogens, and even with protective gear, things still seep through and get on you, that it's killing our firefighters. And our current commissioner, the Republican insurance commissioner, has sat on his hands and allowed North Carolina to be the last state in the country to not cover occupational cancer for firefighters. It's embarrassing and it's angering, and he hasn't lifted a finger to do it. He says it's not his responsibility to advocate for that. And he hasn't. If he had, it would have become law, but he deferred to the cities, which means that all these firefighters who get cancer have to sue their city they work for or the community they volunteer for to go through the industrial commission to get cancer coverage. And that's wrong. And I'm going to fix that. And with your help, with your vote, we will. So with those things there, clearly want to say that if you want a good win for your family's budget, we need a good win as insurance commissioner. And of course, as I learned the other day when I had this sign behind me, not only do we want a good win for all of our candidates, we need to do something that includes go win. You see, I've got a set back here. You can say go win. We got to go win all these races, all of our candidates. Very briefly about state party chair. We've got between 300 and 400 folks working on our staff. I mean, it's a massive influx of folks that are helping us, notwithstanding the pandemic, wearing my state party chair hat. We've got regional hubs. I know it's not always not a perfect system, but materials are getting out. Things are being mailed. Ads are running on TV. Ads are running on social and digital media. People are getting texts. They're getting phone calls. And the wind is blowing our direction. But we cannot wait on the wind. We cannot rest on our laurels because of that. We saw what happened in 2016. So I just ask of you to do what the rest of us are, and is give up sleep as best you can, as safely as you can, and use that extra time to, make several more calls, help more people, remind them about turning in their ballot that they requested, helping them set up a strategy for when they're going to go vote, make sure they know why it is that you would be on a call like this tonight, listening about Democratic candidates, talk about our platform, share with them why it's to save the state. They need to vote the whole slate. And that's our mantra. Just use that extra time like I am and everybody else to reach those folks. And they do exist. There's some folks out there somehow don't realize that this is the most consequential election of our lifetimes. And it's up to you and me to make sure they do their civic duty. And the more folks that vote, the more victories we will have as Democrats. I have done enough talking. Look forward to any questions y'all may have from Cleveland County.
Thank you, Chair Goodwin. That's just a reminder of just how important every single office is. Pam, are there any questions?
There is one. Give me just a second. Let's see here. Excuse me. This question was submitted ahead of time, and it is, do you see a real chance for legislative approval of Medicaid in North Carolina?
If Democrats win both chambers, yes. If Democrats win flip the state Senate, then I'd say yes too, because there were even in the House Republicans had a Medicaid expansion proposal. Where obviously if we don't flip either chamber, then no. But if we flip at least the Senate chamber or flip both, then yes. And be happy to give a brief reason as to why, not only as party chair, but also why the insurance commissioner cares about Medicaid expansion. I don't regulate it as insurance commissioner, but the lack of Medicaid expansion affects health insurance rates and healthcare costs for all the rest of us. So there is a direct correlation as to why I am strongly in favor of expansion, and have always been since it was proposed as part of the Affordable Care Act in 2010. Thank you for your question.
Right.
I do want to mention this, and again, I know one way you could help. I mean, obviously, I've asked for your vote and asked you to give up sleep and contact folks, but as people don't hear much about the Office of Insurance Commissioner, and usually, and my opponent out there is posting, as Republicans do, telling lies and trying to scare folks or whatever, and when in fact the Democrat has saved more money for folks than the Republican has. And you can use that to persuade some of your Republican friends or unaffiliated folks. But what I also need your help with, there seems to be something either in the water or what, I'm not sure what it is, but in recent years, almost every Republican official, and I don't say this lightly, has decided to be overtly racist and overtly sexist. And we need to point out in the insurance commissioner's race, my opponent has said things and published things that are racist and sexist. And just like Donald Trump, and just like that Robinson fellow that's running for lieutenant governor on the Republican side, and just like that Congressman Murphy in the eastern part of the state who has said and posted things that are sexist and racist, we as North Carolinians need to say that type of those whatever is said is unacceptable, and those leaders are unacceptable. And I need your help to remind folks that the Republican insurance commissioner has done the same offensive things, and he doesn't deserve the right to be a member of the Council of State if he thinks so less of women and persons of color. It is outrageous, but people unfortunately don't know about it like they should. I need your help where you can, where appropriate. Remind folks that he's bad news for our pocketbook, but he's just a bad person. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not judging him. I'm just saying.
Thank you
Thank you,
again,
Wayne.
Chair. Thank you again, Chair Goodwin. And again, it's just a great reminder of how important that position is and all of the things that are involved with it. And so it's important for Democrats to get out and vote for every single office for where people are running. Again, thank you for being with us.
Exactly. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to turn it over to Pam Harmon now, and she is
Wayne at ncdp.org, or go through my website, waynegoodwin.org. And but there, you can Google me. You'll find some way to reach me either by email or Twitter or Facebook. But let me know what we can do differently or better. But do know this: with your help, we will win. I need everybody to do everything they can. And thank you for all you're doing. I'm not discounting what all you're doing, but all of us have got to, if we give 100%, we got to give 115%. But I'm excited to be here with you, and I'm going to go have dinner with the kids here so they don't forget what their daddy looks like, and then I'll go on to my next Zoom call at 8:00.
All right. We'll go win.
Go win.
Yeah, that's right.
Go win.
Take care.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Pam, I'm turning it over to you so that you can introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Ken. In 2010, at the age of 21, Jenna Wadsworth became the youngest person in North Carolina elected to office when she won a seat on the Wake County Soil and Water Conservation Board. 10 years later, age 32, she's seeking to win election as North Carolina Secretary of Agriculture. An enthusiastic, progressive campaigner, she hardly looks like the stereotype image of agriculture commissioner, but she's a farmer, all right. She was raised on her grandparents' farm in Johnston County, and Jenna still tends a large plot of fruits, vegetables, fruit trees, nut trees, and vines. Jenna was selected for the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. She later graduated magna cum laude from North Carolina State University, where her studies included politics. She has demonstrated in her Soil and Water Board service that agriculture and environmental stewardship can be a win-win for our economy. Jenna is a smart, fresh voice. We're glad to have you with us, Jenna. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Hey, y'all. That's an Eastern North Carolina greeting for you, right?
Right.
Good to be in Cleveland County, if not virtually. I know my good friend David Wilson Brown, I think he's on the call somewhere. I'm so excited to support him and to have his support in my race. I am Jenna Wadsworth, and I am your Democratic nominee for North Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture. And yes, I did grow up, like Pam said, I grew up on a hog, cow, chicken, corn, cotton, tobacco, and soybean farm on a dirt road in Eastern North Carolina. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, my parents were all farmers. So this is something that's been in my blood, and running for this office is deeply personal to me. So as someone who, to this day, I work with my father to manage and oversee our small farm operation. We rent the bulk of the land, especially as a result of COVID-19. I thought that I would be traveling the state left and right. Oh, I just saw Miss Betsy Wells. I thought that I would be traveling the state. Obviously, COVID-19 had other plans for us, but I still do about 6 to 10 acres of garden every season myself, in addition to, the 50 plus acres we'll rent, plus the rest that's in forestry management. And they say that I am not a farmer. My opponent regularly likes to attack me on that vein, just because I happen to donate or give my food away to food insecure folks or to my friends and family and relatives. And I think it's really exciting what we have the opportunity to do in this race. We have the opportunity to take an industry that's largely been left in the past and move it into the future. We have the opportunity to build a more just, sustainable, and equitable future for every single person who calls North Carolina home, instead of just a select few and cut a corporate campaign PAC check. And that's what my opponent is relying on. Now, y'all, look, Steve Troxler might be someone that some of us voted for, even though we're good Democrats. I was a teen Democrats president. I served on the College Democrats board, the Young Democrats board. I've been involved with my Democratic women forever. Shout out to all Democratic women on this call, because you are the lifeblood of the North Carolina Democratic Party. We know that you're the ones who do the work. Despite being a good Democrat, I'll admit to y'all, even I have voted for Steve Troxler in the past because I thought he was the best candidate to take care of our farmers. Now, the more I've gotten to know Steve Troxler, the more time I've spent researching and really, talking to farmers throughout the state, I realize that he is not the best person to lead us forward. And that's why I'm running against him, because he personally disappointed me and let me down. I've seen that it's harder for most small farmers in the state now than what it was 15 years ago. We don't have new exciting economic opportunities and new markets to participate in. Every time we turn around, the president opens his mouth and gets us involved in a new trade war. And we're seeing, drops in our ability to be successful in soybeans or tobacco or anything else on the international market. Every time we turn around, we have a lack of leadership on both the state and the federal level in agriculture that won't recognize that climate change is indeed real, and they're not using any of the power or tools or resources they have available to them to mitigate the effects of natural disasters on the agriculture industry's ability to produce food and fiber for each and every single one of us. Y'all, there has to be a better pathway forward, and I'm here to prove that there absolutely is. So Steve Troxler has been sitting in this office for over 15 years. And in that time, he has grown complacent. In fact, he doesn't even show up to work in Raleigh most of the time. He tried to get his buddies in the legislature to fund a satellite office in Greensboro, which he lives in Guilford County. So he didn't even have to come to Raleigh. Now, I think that you deserve a full-time commissioner who actually wants to show up every single day and fight for you. That's what you'll get with me. And on top of that, Steve Troxler has become someone who has been bought and paid for by special interests and international corporations like Smithfield Foods. I'm sure y'all have heard about the lawsuits down east. Monsanto, Big Oil, Dirty Chemical, organizations and industries that denigrate our environment and natural resources and largely suffer none of the consequences for doing so. Not to mention the fact that they regularly commit labor atrocities, that they regularly get fined for violating animal welfare standards. You deserve better. And I think that COVID-19 has really shown us just how broken our food system is. I'm sure many of y'all experienced these disruptions where you couldn't find meat on your grocery store shelves early on and during COVID-19. That's because consolidation is absolutely crippling the small farmers' ability to be successful in this state. Do you know that there are 4 major corporations that control 85% of all beef in this country, about 66% of all pork, and 50% of poultry? They have all of the power on the federal level. That's the reason why you don't even have a country of origin label on your meat to know where it actually came from. On top of that, and I look forward to working with David Wilson Brown to change that. But y'all, on top of that, these big meat packing plants have put small meat packing plants out of business. And we have to support small meat packing plants if we want to actually support our small farmers. Most farmers have to travel an hour or 2 hours to even go get their meat processed. Plus, just imagine what that does to the animal in that time period. And as a result of COVID-19, you've seen major backlogs for these small meat processing plants because they're not getting the funding and support they need from our state government or from the federal government. And a lot of them have backlogs of up to 2 years. 2 years. Well, animals don't stop growing in that time. Animals don't stop eating in that time. That means that farmer has to continually produce or grow or purchase feed grains for that animal. That means that farmer may end up not being able to see that animal slaughtered and that food go into our food system for them to make back the money that they've put into raising that animal, because once it reaches a certain size, that animal can't be slaughtered. It can't be. And so, here's my thing. I don't understand why we have all these tools and resources available to us to make sure that we're taking care of the least of us and we're not using them. The other thing I'll say about COVID-19 is y'all may not realize that North Carolina is the 3rd most agriculturally diverse in the state diverse state in the nation. We're also one of the top 10 most agriculturally productive states in the nation. You know what else we are? We're one of the top 10 most food insecure states in the nation, which suggests to me that it's not that we have a problem in our ability to produce enough food and fiber for everyone. It's that we have a values and priorities problem. We're deciding not to feed and take care of the very people that call North Carolina home. And what's worse is 1 in 5 children in this state do not know where their next meal is coming from. I happen to think that that is absolutely criminal in a state that produces so much of the nation's food. Our children deserve better, especially at a time when their brains and bodies are developing. It is absolutely critical that they have access to the highest quality nutrition available. That's why I want to create a program, not only to put a garden on every school ground, to teach our children where their food comes from, to teach them about nutrition and biology and environmental science, but also to work with the legislature, so we can contract with our farmers, make sure that they have a guaranteed revenue source to be able to produce the food that ends up on our children's school breakfast and school lunch plate. So they get a high quality, superior food product. You talk about kids saying they don't like the taste of their fruits and veggies. Well, of course not, if they've been flash frozen, picked too early, and shipped across the country 1,100 to 1,300 miles, which is where the majority of your food comes from before it ends up on your plate. In that time period, emitting a ton of carbon and like not doing great things for your environmental health and well-being either. Let's make sure we give farmers an economic opportunity to be successful. Let's make sure that we give our children every opportunity to succeed as well. These are easy solutions. I don't know why we're not doing them. Other countries have been doing this for years. You know, I want to address climate change. I know it's real, even if my opponent doesn't agree. I think it's naive to think that storms aren't going to grow more intense and more frequent over the coming years. I've talked to farmers throughout this state, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and all of them will tell you that they know that something is happening. They may not have the political courage to say the words climate change aloud, but that's because leadership starts at the top. Until you have a commissioner who is unapologetic in their commitment to addressing climate change head on, nothing is going to change. And I'll tell you, we have to address it because it is the root cause of so many of the issues that our farmers are facing. It's changing their harvest dates. It's changing their crop yields. It's changing their planting dates. It's changing their long-term economic success and viability and their ability to continue to produce food to feed all of us. And that is dire for all of us. We should all be concerned about that. I've talked to apple orchard owners in Henderson County. Some of them can't get crop insurance anymore because blooming seasons are unpredictable. I've talked to coastal fisher people and they don't know what their haul is going to look like because of changing ocean currents. And recently when interviewed and asked about one of his biggest accomplishments in the 15 years that he's been in office, Steve Troxler said it was getting Democrats and Republicans in the legislature to agree to cut relief checks to farmers after the last few major storm events. Now, I'm not going to argue that those farmers didn't need that money. They absolutely needed that money, but they needed that money because he sat on his hands and was derelict in his duty to ensure their long-term economic success, to ensure the ability of consumers to have access to food because no farms means no food. And instead of using all the power, tools, and resources available to him to meaningfully mitigate the effects of these natural disasters on the long-term ability of agriculture to be productive, he didn't do anything. He passed the buck. And I know that writing a relief check can't be our only solution to dealing with natural disasters. It's not only not economically sustainable to ask taxpayers to keep footing the bill for a lack of inaction on government's part, it's also not environmentally sustainable. And that's why I want to create a division within the North Carolina Department of Agriculture that works to specifically address climate change and build resiliency into our farm and community planning, create green jobs, create new industries that put rural North Carolinians back on track, giving you good paying jobs with health insurance, opportunities to be successful, to take care of your family, to put food on your table. And making sure that we're talking about renewable energy, that we're talking about putting green roofs on new construction, that we're putting community gardens in instead of paving more areas for parking lots. Y'all, this is about creating a better future that works for everyone. This is about doing right by our children. This is about doing right by all of the people who will inherit the earth after us. We have a responsibility to use these resources wisely, to steward these resources for the next generation. I will close by saying I'm also someone who will absolutely advocate for, bridging the urban rural divide, for making sure that we can heal these two North Carolinas, between urban and rural North Carolina, between liberal and conservative North Carolina, fighting to make sure that we are making meaningful investments in rural healthcare, because if you're not healthy, you can't be economically productive. The average age of the farmer is 2 years older here than what it is nationally. So this is absolutely critical. We should have already expanded Medicaid. Even conservative states like Missouri were able to put partisanship aside in order to pass policy that made a meaningful difference in people's lives. And the other thing we have to do is we have to fight for meaningful investments in rural broadband access. Because the reality is, if you don't have access to the technology to compete in the global and statewide marketplace, you can't. You're going to get left behind. And, I'll just say, it was absolutely ridiculous that we had children going to go sit in McDonald's parking lots and public library parking lots in order to access free Wi-Fi to do their homework before this pandemic. But now that many of them's long-term educational and career outcomes are going to be defined by their ability to achieve in a primarily virtual environment, it is absolutely critical that we make these investments. Not to mention the fact that I am ready to stand up and fight for our farm workers, our Latinx farm workers who are getting sick at just an untold rate right now. And they are experiencing a lack of humanity and dignity and respect from industry leaders, including Steve Troxler, who thinks that they should continue going to work even if they've been exposed to COVID-19, as long as they allegedly aren't showing any symptoms, just so that way we can continue to keep meat at the grocery store. The last thing I'll say is I think that, with this election, we have the opportunity to build a North Carolina that we all want to live in, and a North Carolina that we want the next generation to inherit. We have the opportunity to elect someone to lead our state's biggest and most economically important industry, an industry that brings in $92.7 billion annually to the state and employs over 770,000 people, who shares our values and priorities, someone who wants to give a nod to our past, who wants to build upon our agricultural heritage, who has a vision for a more just, sustainable, and equitable future that works for everybody, and the actual ability to implement that vision. So my name is Jenna Wadsworth. I'm running to be our next Commissioner of Agriculture, and I need your support to do it, because this race is going to come down to 1 percentage point from what we're seeing from internal polling right now.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jenna. You packed a lot into a little bit of time, but I really appreciate it. You are so right. The issue of concentration of power and wealth in the hands of a few is very much affecting the area of agriculture, just like it is in so many other areas. Pam, do you have any questions for Jenna?
I have one that was submitted early, and while she's answering that, I will search the chat box. I couldn't take my eyes off of her and concentrating on what she was saying. I'm so happy to see somebody that thinks like this, that's this bright and this energetic, running. Okay, so the question that we have is, North Carolina's resources to help farmers have evolved over the years since the days of county farm agents and home demonstration clubs. What innovations do you see in the way North Carolina serves farmers?
So that's great. First of all, we need to always advocate for more funding for extension agents. Extension agents are sometimes the most direct and local point of contact for our farmers in the counties throughout the state. And Extension's budget has just been bleeding year after year. And so I think it's really important that your Commissioner of Agriculture is advocating for increased funding for Extension. Secondly, we have two of the best land grant institutions, research institutions in the whole entire country in NC State and A&T. A&T at HBCU often doesn't get the funding that it needs, despite doing groundbreaking research about second generation farm ownership, minority farm ownership, and urban farm ownership. I think that we need all the best and brightest minds working with us and solving the biggest problem that lies ahead, which is feeding our ever-growing population despite the effect of climate change. And so on that note too, that also means making sure that we're seeing increased funding for ag ed and technical education in our K-12 schools, and teaching children that going into agriculture isn't something that just technical career track children do. That we want the best and brightest minds helping us solve the biggest problem that lies ahead. The other thing that we need to do is talk about creating new advanced resources and opportunities for people who are going to move into regenerative and organic practices, who are going to put conservation first through my climate change division, and making sure that we're helping all of our small farmers have the resources necessary to do that, to opt into getting access to solar installations or wind installations that help to make sure that they're prioritizing conservation while remaining economically viable on their farms. I don't want them to be priced out from participating in that. The other thing to do to help farmers is making sure that we expand the small farmers division within the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Technically, by USDA standards, the bulk of our farms in North Carolina, as far as acreage allotments are concerned, actually fall under the small farm definition, but we only have about 4 folks working in that department overseeing all small farmers, non-traditional farmers, farmers of color, urban farmers, female farmers, and veteran-owned farmers. That's a lot of work. Let's make sure that we give the small farm division the resources and tools and staff necessary to actually serve all of our small farmers who are looking for funding and resource opportunities. And the other thing is creating new and diverse crop markets that allow for success, long-term success. So look, I grew up on a tobacco farm. Our renter has tobacco in part of the farm right now, but tobacco isn't as viable as it once was. That's just the reality of it. Even though folks may not like the cold, hard, ugly truth, that is the actual truth. And so for me, it means reforming the hemp industry, which was supposed to offer so much great promise for our tobacco farmers who have lost something like 98% of the tobacco trading market with China in recent years, not to mention enhanced subsidies and tariffs that have been placed upon them. And, tobacco farmers don't get federal payouts versus like soybean farmers and the 23 other crops that were included on that list for payouts as a result of the trade war because of federal anti-smoking laws that prevent the tobacco industry from receiving funding as a result of what's happened. So there's some farmers that literally just had trailers full of tobacco that they couldn't sell. And so, I think looking at new and diverse markets, hemp, but we need to reform the licensing process. Right now, it's extremely discriminatory, especially to communities of color. If you've ever had a controlled substance conviction, even if you've served your time, you're forever barred and ineligible from participating in the market. And the other thing is, look, I'm in support of the legalization of cannabis, both medicinally and recreationally. I think it's a huge economic opportunity for our farmers. The reality is that cannabis is already legal in 33 states plus DC, so it's not a question of if, but when it happens. And when it does, I want to make sure our small farmers benefit, that licenses are affordable, that minority farmers and female farmers, non-traditional farmers have the support staff available in the North Carolina Department of Agriculture to help them get access to this new market. I want to consider an acreage allotment that allows everyone to have a piece of the pie. And, through legalization, I also think there's the opportunity to begin to achieve true social justice for communities of color who have been disproportionately criminalized and locked up on the basis of possession charges versus Caucasian users for far too long, despite the fact that the data shows us that white folks and Black folks use cannabis at roughly the same rates. And the majority of North Carolinians, a new poll just showed, are in support of legalization, at least medicinally. So those are a few of the ways that I would love to help provide new resources and opportunities to our farmers in this state.
Thank you again, Jenna. Again, you've illustrated just how connected all these issues are and how it touches on so many different areas. And so the things that our other speakers have talked about and the things that you've talked about, how working together as a team, if we can get you all elected, how much more effective we will be. So we again appreciate you being here and appreciate your energy and your knowledge, and we will do everything we can to help see that you are our next Secretary of Agriculture.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. And again, if you want to learn more about me, just check out my website, jennawadsworth.com. If you are so inclined to make a small contribution, any amount helps, because right now we are about to start running our digital ads. And again, this is an incredibly close race. So every voter that we can contact makes a difference. If you have a few extra hours, please volunteer or consider volunteering to phone bank. So thank you all again so much for everything that you've done up to this point and everything you're going to do to help the whole ticket this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Blake, and Jerry is going to introduce our next speaker, David Wilson Brown. Jerry, are you here?
He might be muted.
I've got to turn my mic on. Thank you. For the decade since the last decennial census, the Republicans have had the power in the legislature to draw all the legislative and congressional districts. They've done so while continually fighting court battles about the inequities of their work. The last redistricting, though, required them to do something that they had not been willing to do before, and that is to create some districts where there's enough balance in the district to beat the pants off the Republicans. That situation has left Cleveland County in a string bean kind of district where our star is the naysaying Virginia Fox. We had the good fortune, though, to get two things out of this redistricting. One of them is the chairperson from the 10th district, and the other is David Wilson Brown, who is an experienced candidate. He represented us in the 10th district last year, and he's not going to be outworked by anybody in the string bean district that reaches from North Carolina all the way to the Virginia line. David is a McAdenville resident, a graduate of Appalachian State University, and an experienced IT consultant. Years ago, he served as a congressional intern while a young man, and he has kept a passion for politics as a way to make people's lives better. His views are very different from the naysaying Fox. He sees what's wrong in Washington and what lies ahead for us as a country. He knows we are well aware of how important it is to keep our majority in the House of Representatives, and for that matter, to take back the majority in the Senate. So now let me say to David, we're proud of the campaign you're waging. We're glad to see you today, and I am proud to give you over to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry, and thank you, Cleveland Democrats. First, I do want to pause and say we've had a tremendous slate before you tonight. Chief Justice Beasley, of course, the Secretary of State Elaine Marshal, our great potential again insurance commissioner and party chair Wayne Goodwin, fantastic people. But oh my God, what a rock star Jenna Wadsworth is. If y'all didn't learn like so much more about that position in this one speech, you need to listen to her again. She is amazing and really deserves our support. She is the kind of candidate that gets me very excited to be a Democrat. Not that the others aren't fantastic candidates, and man, we are just blessed with numerous gifts on this election cycle. But man, Jenna's great. So of course, as Jerry introduced, my name is David Wilson Brown. I am running for U.S. Congress here in the new 5th Congressional District. I had the opportunity to run in Cleveland County in 2018 against Patrick McHenry in the old 10th District. I did reasonably well for a first candidate. Put it in perspective, we got almost 41% of the vote. I raised the least out of 9 Democratic challengers to sitting members of Congress last election cycle, but I had the 4th largest shift towards Democrat in that election cycle. And we're trying to continue on. Now, certainly this isn't the race we hoped we would be getting. We certainly hoped we would have a rematch against McHenry to capitalize on name recognition and keep our strong ties in the networks in the half of Buncombe County and Asheville that got me 40,000 votes last election cycle. That is not the case. Things changed, and I'm happy for it. I think that we have what I would call a more red meat opponent in Virginia Fox. Her views are pretty antiquated and disgusting. So it's a little bit easier to show a very strong comparison between myself and what I champion versus what she has done for the 16 years she has been in office. Also, one of the big benefits of this new district is of the parts that I ran in last election cycle, all of Gaston County, all of Cleveland County, and half of Rutherford. That's over almost 50% of the voting population in this whole new district. So we have a real opportunity here to destabilize what she has. And if you look at at the counties that came over from the old 5th, that's only 30% of the old district. Burke and Caldwell are the ones we're gaining from the 11th district. So we have a real opportunity in this election to destabilize what should be a fairly safe Republican district, because there's not a lot of folks down here who know her. I've built a lot of strong goodwill in Cleveland and Gaston counties, especially because of my interaction with y'all in the last election. Of course, the pandemic has trimmed down our ability to get out and get to know people as well as we used to. But we really have this opportunity to deliver a better road forward for the people of this whole district. That's what my campaign slogan's about. And let me tell you a little bit about what I mean when I say a better road forward. What I mean when I say a better road forward is an America where we are stronger together, where the rising tide lifts all ships. We need to deliver healthcare for all in America. Healthcare is a huge component of individuals spend on a yearly basis, but in their lifetime. It's a huge portion of their spend. But we can deliver the same type of single payer solution that they have in Canada and many other Western civilizations, that we take the profit motive out of healthcare. We take the middleman out that's making a profit off of keeping us from our own healthcare. And we have a system that's essentially just an insurance system that covers everyone. That's why big insurance does well for big corporations. They have the ability to pull their resources together and ask more and demand more of hospitals and drug manufacturers. It's the 800-pound gorilla. We want the 800-pound gorilla fighting for us, not keeping us from the healthcare that we deserve. So I want to deliver healthcare, single payer system to cover every American citizen from cradle to grave. And I believe strongly, and this is the argument you can make to your neighbors and friends and family, that is a pro-life policy, right? Whatever the take on abortion or access to abortion that they may have, think about the folks that are here on earth in front of us that are suffering because they don't have access to healthcare, or they have to choose between paying for healthcare or affording their health coverage versus being able to put food on the table for their children and their family. These are things that we should not have to struggle in what's supposedly the greatest nation in the world. So that's number one. Number two, we have to get to a place in America where we reward the dignity of work by making sure that everyone, no matter what job you do, can earn a living wage. That should not be an argument. That should not be a question when you are asking someone to do work. And the reality is they're working for a corporation that is making a profit, whether it's a small business or a big corporation, they're making a profit off of that work. How can you justifiably get someone to get paid for doing work for you to make a profit and them not be able to make ends meet for their family? That is immoral. And that's something I want to get Americans to be behind and right that wrong, because American workers are the backbone. I mean, we're talking about the 99% of Americans who work day in and day out. Now, plenty of us make enough to do it based on education or what have you. But how are we going to continue to look down on folks that maybe haven't had the education or the privilege to get an education to the level that some of us have? And we have to right that wrong. We have to erase the greed motive out of keeping people from being able to make a living wage. That was number two. Number three, this is the most important, well, not the most important, but it's one of those three most important issues. And that's making sure that we have a well-funded public education system. My opponent, especially as someone who's taken more money from for-profit education than any other government official. In fact, if you add what Biden and Trump together have gotten from for-profit education sources, they just barely get more jointly than Virginia Fox has taken. She is the ranking member of the House Education and Labor Board Committee, and she is firmly against public education. In fact, in a hearing this very June, she claims that she is a student of the Constitution, and nowhere in the Constitution is the word education. How can you have someone leading on our education initiatives who is so firmly against the status of public education, the desire to deliver public education? The great equalizer for America is our public education system. It is the foundation for our great society and what has gotten us to the point of being the superpower that we are today. We have to make sure that we do not allow the other side to continue to erase the great movement forward that we've had by continuing to cut and slash budgets at the federal and state level. We need to make sure our teachers are paid well. We need to bolster our teaching class to treat it as the what's the word I'm looking for? The eminent position in our society that it should be. One thing I'd like to do from the federal level is I'd like to make every public school teacher position a federally tax exempt position. In other words, they should not have to pay federal income tax, keep more money in their pocket, re-energize our economy with them spending more in our economy, but make sure they're paid what they deserve to be paid by giving them that boost and making sure that we recognize as a nation how important, because we don't have a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or whatever position you can think of as high and mighty that hasn't gone through multiple school teachers and have their lives affected by those multiple school teachers. So these are three initiatives that I want to push along with a federal jobs program, a modern WPA style program that puts people to work, bridging the gap for all the jobs we're losing to not immigration, but automation and AI. Put people to work improving our communities. Let's pay it forward. Let's put people to work fixing our roads and bridges. If you've ever read the engineering report on our nation's bridges, you would probably not leave your home. It's pretty dismal. We can put people to work delivering broadband that's been talked about from several people tonight, delivering broadband, especially to rural areas, because you know what? A big provider can come into my neighborhood and pick up 100 subscribers in an afternoon, but it's when in the rural areas where people live much more spread out, the profit motive isn't there for them to put the lines out there. We as a nation have to take that on because so many people are getting left behind. Our school children not having access to broadband, whether they're in urban and can't afford it, or whether they're in rural and it can't get to them. We have to deliver better on that, or else we as a nation are going to get left behind. We can deliver clean energy initiatives that make sure we break the dependency on our fossil fuels to help get a cleaner environment. We can put people to work like they did with the Civilian Conservation Corps and help clean up our environment. We've got a lot of coal ash issues here in North Carolina. What if we had that program work to do the cleanup and charge back to those corporations to make that feasible financially for us? These are things that we can do as a federal government to pay it forward and invest in our communities. Another great example would be coming into areas like Shelby and finding areas where there's been companies that have left and there's abandoned buildings or plants that have been environmentally unfixable. They could come in and clean these out, demolish these dilapidated buildings, and make these shovel-ready sites for new corporations to come in, new investment to come in. These are things that we have to do to deliver for our nation, especially for our rural areas. The struggle I have is how many people in rural areas buy into the right-wing propaganda about the cultural wars or whatever, however they want to form it, but how so much of what they do actually negatively affects their bottom line because corporations have strip mined our small towns and rural communities so terribly. We have to get that message across to them. And this is a message of hope that I bring, that if we can redefine what it means to be a Democrat in Western North Carolina, myself in the 5th district, we have a great candidate, Mo Davis, in the 11th district. We are gearing up to go to Washington to completely deliver for Western North Carolina in a whole new way, and really reinvigorate what it means to be a Democrat in North Carolina, and reclaim the ownership of being the moral party. Because I don't see the Sermon on the Mount in the Republican platform. I see the people that deliver for the people, that help the lesser of those. That is the Democratic Party. That is what we stand for, the working class people. And these are the things that I'm going to fight for you in Washington. And I see a question from Betsy saying, has Virginia Fox debated me this election? Saying, no, she's actually refused to. We promoted the letter where she actually said that she doesn't believe in debates because all they do is generate soundbite information, and that she'll be happy to rest on the policies and the voting records that she has. But we know how little the population is educated about what those individual voting records are and how they really affect their bottom line. Her and just like McHenry before her are very keen to have little bits of things in policies they support to say, look, this is a good thing for you. But when you look at the vast majority of what they're passing, it's garbage. It's stuff that hurts the working class so badly. That tax bill that they passed, the tax scam, the Trump tax bill, was so terrible for America. It takes so much money out of our hands and puts the burden on the middle class. They gave us a tiny bit of tax revenue back, but what they did was they stripped away a lot of the what are they called, the tax credits that we could apply for. So it's a massive loss for the middle class. They're stealing from our pockets and telling us to be happy that we get the pittance that we get. We have to fight for more, because what's coming in the technological revolution is going to leave more and more Americans behind and without jobs. We have to fight now in order to make sure that we're protected and that we leave a better future for our kids and grandkids. And these are the things that I want to fight for on a daily basis. We have to fight those. Absolutely, Pam. Go ahead and bring that other question.
Okay. What are you finding as top of mind concern for people in the 5th district? Does it vary from northern counties to south?
You know what? I find that so many people just need the same things. They want to keep more money in their pockets, and they're told the taxes are the boogeyman. That's what it is. That's a big reason why people support the Republican Party. Aside from the wrapping of that cultural war, they want to keep more money in their pockets. They want to make sure that they have a future. One of the things I hear the most from the more rural areas is the issue of, hey, if my kid has an opportunity to succeed and they do well at school and they get to go to college and they're able to afford that, many times they have to go somewhere else to start their future because the jobs are not here. Now, my argument is that our rural areas in the 5th district are gorgeous areas. And I would love to live in some of these mountainous and hill, foothill areas that are so much nicer away from the hubbub of the big city. That's one of the reasons I live in McAdenville. I live in a small town outside of the big city because I want that small town feel. I want the better air quality. I want the better views. This is something that we could deliver better for people because, hey, the pandemic has proven so many of us can work from home. We don't have to be in the urban centers in order to deliver for our jobs. And if we had the broadband capability, if we had some of the important things that we would want in these rural areas to be able to shop and deliver, and we would do that more, and we would actually have growth, explosive growth in our rural communities if we could deliver broadband, if we could deliver hospital services and things. That Medicaid expansion would be so critical in our state because it would save many of our rural hospitals that are either on the verge of losing, and we've lost some. I don't remember the specific ones in this district that we may have lost because of this decade of refusing the Medicaid expansion started by our friend Tom Tillis. We have to deliver better for people because we want better living. This is a gorgeous part of our state where we can encourage people to live in rural communities and have a nicer small town experience in their life and still be able to take advantage of the jobs that we would be getting otherwise only in the urban areas. These are things I'm passionate about delivering and making sure that we fight for. And I really appreciate the folks in Cleveland County giving me this additional opportunity to speak about my passions for delivering for this nation, for this district. Again, coming on the heels of all the great candidates we've seen tonight, I really can't express to you how important this election is and how getting every Democratic vote out and working hard to persuade those that may not automatically align with us. You know, we talk about the unaffiliated voter. There's also a vast amount of apathetic or uneducated voters that aren't bad people. I'm not saying anything negative about them. They just don't understand how important all these elections, local, state, and federal, impact their daily lives and how much positive change. Can you imagine what this nation's going to look like when we have President Biden and Vice President Harris in office with a Democratic-led Senate, thanks to people like Cal Cunningham getting in office, and that we are able to flip the North Carolina General Assembly to at least get us in the room to have discussions about the things brought before us and keep our fantastic Democratic Governor Cooper in office. Can you imagine what North Carolina is going to look like in the next 4 years after we get that established and we get in there and we do the work that the people are asking of us? We make the change. We protect our voting rights. We fix the Supreme Court, because by God, they've wrecked it. We need to do these things to do it right and deliver right for the people of America, because they need us to do it and they want us to do it. Even those that aren't voting for us are going to benefit from this. How can you say that about a Republican-led initiative in policies? What Republican-led policy is going to benefit not only their people, but the people that don't vote for them? That's just not existent. So vote Democratic up and down the ballot. Don't forget the judges. Make sure to support everyone, because this is such an important election, and get people passionate. If you've got kids that just don't quite know what to do with voting, help them through it. Don't judge them. Don't make them feel silly for not knowing enough. Help educate them, support them, get them to the polls, because the future, the policies that are set by those that are being elected in this election are going to affect them a much longer period of time than they're going to affect us. So that's my closing comments. This is the election of our lifetimes, and my God, we need you passionate and out there fighting for us. Thank you so very much for your time. My name is David Wilson Brown. I will be your voice in Washington. I will fight for the people first and foremost, because I don't take corporate PAC money, and I'm going to put the interest of our people above all else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David Wilson Brown. We appreciate so much your being here. I want to extend my thanks to you and to all of the candidates that we have had the privilege to hear tonight. We have heard some themes that just go right across the board, no matter what office we're talking about. Themes of justice, themes of helping the people on the bottom, themes of fairness, themes of getting health care for everyone. We have got to fight, and we've got to get these candidates elected, because David Wilson Brown is exactly right. The more we can assure that we get the Democratic slate into position in office, the more they can work together as a team together to accomplish the kind of changes that David Wilson Brown is talking about. So again, thank you. And I am going to turn things over to Pam. She has some important announcements and some important information you will not want to miss. And so, Pam, you are up.
Okay, let's get that first slide up there, please, Kent. There we go. Okay, we are almost done, folks. This won't take long at all to run through the announcements. First of all, we want you to know that our contact information is on the last slide you will see in a few minutes. We'll leave the slide up long enough for you to copy any of that contact information that you need. Next, we ask you to please reach out to us if you still need signage or sample ballots or palm cards to hand out. If you are willing to volunteer or phone bank or text bank, or if you're willing to volunteer to greet voters at the polling sites or be poll observers. We especially still need some poll greeters for early voting, which starts in 2 days. Okay, next slide, Kent.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
This is important, folks. Let's briefly talk about voting and registration. If you are not already registered, you cannot vote on Election Day, November the 3rd. So please go to early voting. You can register and vote at early voting from October the 15th through October the 31st. And if you are a Cleveland County resident, you can vote at any of the 4 early voting sites in our county during early voting hours. Okay. Next slide, please. This is the last announcement. We have heard nothing to make us expect any problems with voting in Cleveland County, but we want you to know that the Democratic Party is prepared anyway. When you go vote, if you see anything suspicious, if anyone tries to intimidate you, if you're told that you can't vote for any reason, etc., please call this number, 1-833-VOTE4NC. That's your state Democratic Party looking after you. People are available to help, including lawyers in Cleveland County. Now over to you, Curtis.
Okay, thank you, Pam. So here we are, guys. We need to go and vote in overwhelming numbers as Democrats to give the Republicans a message that we Democrats are taking back our country and we're taking back our county and our state. We know that for a fact that whenever Democrats go out and vote in numbers and they turn out, then we win election. So let's make this a blue tsunami. And again, I want to thank each and every one of our speakers who spoke tonight, and to each of you for joining us this evening. And we do look forward to more interactions before Election Day. And we hope that you'll contact us when we can help you or when you can help out the party or one of the candidates. So good evening to you all, and do please stay safe.